sit back, relax, and let's have a chapter chat. I'm your host, Jessica Foster, and we are so excited to have author Ellery Adams here with us today. Ellery is a best-selling author and just released a brand new book called The Tattered Cover. Ellery, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
And I actually got to preview The Tattered Cover before it was even released. And I have to tell you, I love it. It's fantastic.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
It's a fun read and it's a mystery. So without giving away too much, let's just give a little synopsis.
Sure. So this is the eighth book in a series called The Secret Book and Scone Society, which is set in the mountain area of North Carolina, so Western North Carolina. You do not have to read the whole series to read any of the books. You can pick any of them up as a standalone. But starts off on a stormy night, and there's a bookstore owner named Nora, and she's decided to host an author event featuring a psychic who's turned into a memoirist. She's written a memoir. And let's just say the storm makes the power go out. And when the power goes out, some bad things happen. And when the lights come back on, there is a dead body to be dealt with.
And that's where the mystery comes in.
Right.
And this is a great time for this book to release because we're talking Halloween, but then it goes into the Christmas season as well.
It does. And I mean, this is cozy reading season as far as I'm concerned. This is the time where we're pouring our hot cups of tea and lighting our candles and starting to get out the throw blankets and putting logs on the fire. This is the time for a mystery read, and a mystery read that isn't overly graphic too. So it takes you away into that suspense, but without too much that will scare you before you go to sleep.
And that's what I like. I do like a cozy read, but one that also kind of keeps me on the edge of my seat a little bit.
Exactly. We don't want you going to sleep.
So I heard that you actually like rainy days because you like to cozy up with a good book.
I do. I think rainy day reading is a legitimate thing. Bookstores owners will tell you that when it rains, they're very busy. There's something about the rain that drives people toward the printed word, which is great. And I love to shop bookstore shelves on rainy days too. I mean, there's something about the noise in the background. And it makes me buy extra books. That's what I tell my husband. Like, it was the rain. It wasn't me.
Yeah, it's not my fault. The rain made me do it.
They just leapt into my basket. What am I supposed to do?
And here's the thing. When it's books, we can buy as many as we want, right? Because it's good for us to read.
That's right. It's cheaper than therapy. And it is a form of therapy. That's why my main character, Nora, is an amateur bibliotherapist. And that's somebody who prescribes books to help people get through their problems. And I don't know about you, but I have used books to help me with very difficult phases of my life for my entire life. So thank goodness for books.
Oh, I agree. I love a book, and we can gather so much from books. We were talking earlier about reading levels and how we're seeing young children not reaching the milestones that they need to reach when it comes to reading and reading comprehension. And I feel like part of that is because of electronics, phones, all of that.
Right. And I mean, it's easy to, put the blame on electronics, and electronics are great. I use them as well. And they're flashy and they're exciting. And, the problem with electronics, as far as scrolling on your phone or something like that, is that it kind of reduces our attention span a little bit. And we're kind of expecting to have images come at us and words come at us. And we just kind of have to lay there and let it all in. There's something about a book where there's a tactile thing when you're holding it in your hands, but even if it's an audiobook, which I love because they help me get more reading in, or an ebook, there's a connection between you, the reader, and the writer through the characters that you can't replace through anything electronic. There's no video game, there's no movie. Because in your mind, you're visualizing the places and the characters, and you're feeling what they're feeling. That's an experience that really can't be replicated by AI or VR or anything.
Exactly. Yeah. There's something about using your imagination that just takes you to a whole new world.
It's a magic carpet ride every time you open a new book.
In Gen Z, they are making reading cool again.
They are. I love Gen Z for so many reasons, but one of the reasons I really love them is that they are proud readers. They are posting about books, they're blogging about books, they're getting together with their friends to hang out and talk about books. And they are such a powerful voice. They're controlling really a lot of bookstore display windows. And boy, I would have loved to have been a 22-year-old woman, young woman, thinking I have the power to drive book sales and change a bookstore display. I mean, that would have been my fantasy come true, which is why I have to create a fake bookstore so I can do these little window displays with every book. But they're doing it for real out there on Book Talk and Bookstagram. And I just those book sisters. God bless you guys. I love you. You're doing the right thing out there.
Yes, they are doing some great work. You talked about having to create a fake bookstore. And did you once work in a bookstore yourself?
I did. Back when the dinosaurs were still roaming the earth, I had a job at a Barnes and Noble. And it was really supposed to be this between careers thing. We had moved from North Carolina to Richmond, Virginia, and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to get back into teaching or if I wanted to do something new. And in the meantime, I thought, this Barnes and Noble is right up the street and I love books. I'm going to go work there. And it was a fantastic job. I had the most wonderful coworkers. And I really got to do what my character, Nora Pennington, does. People would come in and they would say, I'm looking for this kind of, and they very rarely were looking for a specific title. What they were looking for was a feeling. And, what book was going to give them the feeling of, say, the coziness of an Alexander McCall Smith novel or something like that. Or they wanted to have something that was similar to Jodi Picoult, but they had already read all of her books. So I loved that. I loved leading them to the shelf and saying, oh, if you like magical realism, you're going to love Alice Hoffman. And then having them come back in a couple weeks later saying, I loved that book so much. What else can you recommend for me? I mean, to me, that was so joyful. And I just love talking books with people. Like if you get me alone in a corner, I might show you some cat photos, but other than that, we're just going to talk about books.
So I think that we could be best friends because I do like showing people photos of my cats and talking about books. Just
All right, there
saying.
you go. Now, if you drink coffee, then we're just like perfect together.
Right. Well, I noticed that in the Tattered cover, you actually dedicated this to Barnes and Noble workers, the staff there at those stores.
I did. I think that people have an idea of what being a bookseller is like, and it's just, there's romantic music in the background, and they're just twirling on ladders and shelving books, and there's little birds tweeting, and there's a lot more to that. I mean, I think during COVID, it was very difficult for them or during the pandemic, it was very difficult for a lot of booksellers to get by, and I think we needed books during the pandemic more than ever. And they really were, booksellers everywhere were really kind of our lifeline to hope and to escape and to stuff like that. I just love Barnes and Noble because they are a big chain. Yes. I mean, and I also love independent bookstores, but I love brick and mortar stores. And I think Barnes and Noble has done a really good job kind of changing with the times, and there are new stores opening all the time. And I don't know about you, but nothing makes me happier than when I see a reel or a video of a new bookstore opening. I feel like as long as that keeps happening, like our society has hope. Don't close the bookstores, open new ones. We need more. We need them. If there were as many bookstores as there were Starbucks locations, this would be a good place.
I agree. There is something about actually having a book in your hand and shopping for them. I mean, it really does bring me joy too.
It does. It does. And I tried to make Nora Pennington a very empathetic character because I really do think that booksellers are very empathetic people. I mean, they're willing to listen to you go on and on and on about something so that they can sell you, a $15 paperback. They don't care about what you're ending up buying. They care about fulfilling a need for you. And they're like teachers. They're doing an amazing service. They're not getting paid a lot for it. And I just think that I had to dedicate this to them to just say, thanks, you guys are amazing. And I know that you're putting my book in people's hands. And without you, I would be here. So,
And let's talk a little bit about your path to becoming an author. Just explain that process to us.
oh, it was a windy one. I tell my kids this all the time because they plan stuff out for their future. And I say, well, it's great to have plans. I think that's wonderful, but prepare yourself because very few people get to go A, B, C, D in a nice straight line. Things are usually pretty wonky. Um, I had always wanted to be a writer. My parents really thought that I should be a lawyer, and we argued about that a lot when I was a teenager. But I was not paying for my college; they were. So I said, sure, I'll enroll in pre-law. And then I finished my undergraduate degree, and I just thought, I don't want to do this law thing. But I just was not cut out for it. So I went to grad school to stall for a little while in a creative writing program, which I loved. And I decided, okay, I'm going to be a poet and a children's book author. Neither of those things panned out. So I got into teaching. And those of you who are teachers are going to love my young woman mentality because I thought, oh, I'll come home after a long day of teaching and I'll happily start working on a novel. Yeah, right. You come home from a long day of teaching and you turn into mush on the sofa. So, yeah, I taught for 8 years and kept thinking about ideas for a novel. But it took moving to Richmond and getting that job at Barnes and Noble and just being immersed in the book world for me to have some time and breathing space to start writing my first book, which actually came out of homesickness. I missed North Carolina and I missed my mom. And my husband was a new physician. He was working all the time. And just to be totally honest, I was really lonely and I kind of made up my own friends. That's how the first book came about.
But what a success story and something that you dreamed about from a young age finally came to fruition. So, really, when you have those dreams planted in you, they don't go away.
It's true. And I tell all aspiring writers that the difference really between me and anybody else is that I just kept pursuing it. I kept sending out letters to agents because back then it was not email, it was actually snail mail letters. And so I would get rejections in the mailbox. And I don't know if it's easier to get it, unfold that as a letter or read it as an email. I guess at least for the letters, you can keep them and look back later and say, ha, you rejected me, but I'm here anyway. No, it's not like that. But everyone gets rejected. And, some people that just is too much for them. And they kind of say, well, I'm gonna give up on this dream because it's hard. It hurts, and it definitely hurts to get rejected. Nobody likes that, but if you can just push through that and keep going, eventually, I really believe this. If you just don't quit, there will be somebody who wants to find a home for your book, or at least tells you we could find a home for your book if you change this and this and this and this and be kind of open and receptive to those changes. So it's really two components, like don't quit and be willing to have some flexibility when it comes to changing your manuscript. Because if you do get signed by a publishing house or an editor, that's exactly what they're going to do anyway. So this helps you get you ready to be a professional writer.
And you've written a lot of books.
I really, it's crazy. At one point when I had little kids at home, I was writing 3 a year. I really don't remember any of those time periods because I think I was just in a daze.
And I know a lot of professional writers don't write that many. Do you feel like you're just a fast writer, or do you just love it so much that it just flows?
Well, I think I was privileged enough to be able to be home instead of working outside the home at another job. And I think that for many writers, they can't afford to be home and work full time until they've kind of been successful enough as writers. So it's kind of like that tricky circle. I have to be able to write to be successful, but I don't have time to write because I'm at my job. So I do know a lot of people who will get up at 5 and write for 2 hours, or they'll stay after the kids go to bed, they'll write for 2 hours and they get it done. I mean, I was really lucky that I didn't have to do that. And for me, I was writing for different publishers. So I had different contracts and I didn't want to stop any of my series because I didn't want to let any of my readers down. But eventually I had to drop to 2 books a year because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't be the mom that I wanted to be and the spouse that I wanted to be. I felt like I was kind of dropping off my commitments to my family. So I did have to drop a series. And I was very honest with readers. I was like, I know you love this series, and I'm sorry, but I'm just staring at the computer screen too much and I'm going to miss my kids growing up. So 2 books a year, I think is going to be enough for me for now on. And that's been a really nice, I kind of want to have one due every 6 months for a long time. And now I've worked my way up to one due around every 9 months. And that's wonderful because I have a little breathing room.
And it's nice to have a breathing room. And I have to
Yes.
respect that, to say, hey, look, family has to come first. I think that most of us have been confronted with that at some point in our life where
I think so.
one thing is taking over a little too much.
Yeah, and it really was because when you're a professional writer, it's not just about writing the book and plotting the mystery and getting in the heads of your characters. And a lot of times when I'm really deeply in the heads of my characters, I'm not even that present when I'm not on the computer because I'm thinking about what they're thinking about. But also we do all this promotion. I mean, we're social media is a requirement for writers these days, whether you're good at it or not. So you find yourself online interacting with people and answering emails. It's just like any other job. There's the busy work part of your job, and then there's all the other facets of your job. So it really can pull you away if you work on the promotion. I mean, I pretty much do something to do with writing 7 days a week.
Oh, I'm sure you would have to.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, luckily I love it and there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. So if I spend 2 hours interacting with people on Instagram, to me that's just like hanging out with friends. So it's totally a benefit.
And you like to write a series.
I do. I really love character arcs. I love to take a core group and in the Secret Book and Scone Society, it really is a sisterhood. These are 4 women who really well, they were in the same town. It could be any small town across America, but in this case, it's in the South. And they're friendly to each other, as Southerners are, but they're not close. And the first murder investigation in the Secret Book and Scone Society draws them together, and they're kind of guarded. They each have an issue from their past that makes them a little bit guarded as people. They're not very trusting, but they become friends. And I would never want to break up this sisterhood. They each bring a gift that helps solve the mystery, just a personality gift. I think we're like that with all of our friends. We have one friend that it has a way with words. We have one friend who's like a great gift giver, or one friend who's the great party host. But together, it's the sisterhood that makes them so powerful. And I would never want to break them up. And I love spending time with them. And readers tell me all the time that they wish they had friends like these 4 women, and they would love to be an honorary member of this book club. They wish, especially for people who are home alone, through chronic illness, or you know they're retired and they're in a lonely place in their lives. Everybody could use a sisterhood like this, and the murders are kind of on the side. They just happen to be people who like to balance the scales in their community and make their community the best place that they can make it. I mean, they're not saints. They are definitely not saints. They're very flawed. They make mistakes all the time, but that also makes them more relatable. They're just women we want to hang out with. And then we had one gentleman came in the picture in one of the later books, and people have told me very clearly he's our favorite. You can never write him out of the series. And I'm like, yes, the message has been delivered. I gotcha.
I love that. And as far as book tour, is that something that you really look forward to?
I really like book tours because, and this is going to sound so strange, People will ask me questions that I would never see coming, or we'll have little side conversations kind of after the event is over and we're in the signing line or I'm getting ready to go, and they'll come up and they'll just tell me something about why the book was meaningful. And it seems strange, okay, you write mystery novels, how meaningful can they be? But it's really, I try to fill every book with equal parts, kind of grit. And obviously, the murder, I take murders very seriously in my books. I don't lighten the effects that a violent crime would have against any community, because I feel like that's belittling the experience. So even though there's that heavy side of it, there's also a lot of heart and humor and love expressed between the characters in the book. And so many people, I can't believe, have come up and said, it means so much to me that you have representation for a character with chronic illness. I feel like we're not really represented in novels. And, you got that so accurately. And I actually tried one of the remedies your character tried and it really worked. Or somebody will tell me that it got them through a hospital stay and that kind of stuff. Whenever I'm kind of feeling blocky or, oh, I don't really feel like working today, those people's faces come into my head and I'm like, sit down, you've got a job to do. I mean, yeah, I'm not brokering world peace or anything like that, but I feel like with every book that reaches a reader, it's reaching the right reader at the right time. And that's a gift that I want to keep giving as long as I'm doing it well.
I understand that because as a journalist, it can get exhausting sometimes. And of course, you can get those comments from people that are not so nice sometimes.
Yeah.
But then you will have those viewers that say, hey, you really made a difference. That story impacted my life. Thank you so much for bringing that. Thank you for what you do for the community. And it just makes it worth it. And you're like, okay, I can keep going. I can keep going.
It's true that they bolster us, and it's you're right that there is the other side of the coin too, and those negative comments I think can, unfortunately, as humans, negative comments seem to rise to the top and get stuck in our heads. Um, but I think that as long as sometimes I'll even save emails from people and I'll go back and I'll be like, no, 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 this is the majority is right here. And the person who wrote this email, those are the people that I'm writing for. So it's good for us to have a place where we can go back and be like, oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes, I used to save negative emails, and I don't really know why I used to save those. I delete those now, and I save the nice ones.
Yeah, I guess I get that from an extent, to a certain extent about saving them, because you're probably like me and you probably think to yourself, like, well, is there something I could be doing better?
Right.
And right. So people will ask me, do you read reviews on your books? And I do. And after all of these books, I don't get as wounded as I did in the beginning by a harsh review, but I do ask myself, does this person have a point? If they say it respectfully and with constructive criticism, I am really open to that. And I have made changes in my books based on reviews because I think sometimes they have valid points. They're not always presented maybe in the way that I want, but I try to read between some of the negativity. And then sometimes I read some and I'm just like, ah, you're a troll, moving on. And that's when I get out one of my coffee cups like this.
Let's see, that one says, I like you.
I like you. I will kill you last. So that's the history of. There's a wall of 100 coffee mugs and miracle books in my fictional bookstore, so that I can have an excuse to buy all these cute coffee mugs for home. Be like, oh, it's for research. I need to have Sheldon serve a latte and like a cute mug with a smiley face on it. Come on now.
I love your sense of humor. And I think that it's important when you're writing things about murder to also have some levity in there.
Absolutely. And not a lot. I mean, I definitely wouldn't consider my books humorous mysteries, but I think my characters, like many intelligent, well read people, can be a little salty sometimes. And I think that's refreshing to put in there. And then I like to have some just really heartwarming moments between the characters where they're they just say something to each other and they're looking at each other with affection. They have to kind of grab each other's hands, as we do with our friends and loved ones when they just say something that moves us. Um, so I do think that's really important, and it's really just part of life. Like any part of life, like a good book is a well balanced book.
What are you most looking forward to readers getting from this particular book?
Well, they have, for the people who have been reading from the beginning, they get to see a wonderful milestone for Estella in this book, which I think is going to make them really happy. For people who are new to this series, I'm just really excited for you to meet the sisterhood. I think you're going to fall in love with them and feel just right at home in Miracle Springs. And then just the whole sense of the mystery, which does kind of start off at a regular, even pace and then build up to a really exciting conclusion. And hopefully, I'm just grabbing a little prop here. So, the psychic medium, as far as having this character for a psychic, was something I hadn't really planned on. I had, this is a total tangent, but I promise I will come back around to answer that question. My family and I visited Salem in Massachusetts, and I saw this really interesting teacup, and it's like a fortune telling teacup. And I don't do a lot of fortune telling in my life. I have a magic 8 ball around here somewhere, which has gathered dust, and I probably haven't used in 20 years. But I just thought this teacup was so interesting, and I ended up. This is how I write I work as a writer. Is I'll go down all these rabbit holes, and suddenly I'll have an idea for a book. And I wanted to know if a fortune telling teacup was a really old thing. And they have been around for such a long time. And some of them are really interesting looking. And then, you'd swirl around your tea and it would land on something and then be able to tell your fortune from it. Not something I have figured out how to do. But I started thinking, well, wouldn't it be interesting to wonder if somebody who said they had a psychic ability maybe actually had it? Or were they just tricking people for money? And what if you couldn't really tell the difference? Um, that would be a really interesting character. And that kind of started my whole thought process. We could have an author event, this woman could come in, the lights could go out. And if she's been doing this job for a long time, she may have wronged some people, or she may have given them a prediction that they really didn't want to hear. I mean, not all predictions are positive, right? At least I think they are in fortune cookies. But when I was younger, there were actually some mean fortune cookies. You were kind of nervous about opening those suckers. You were like, I don't know if I want to open this. But it was kind of that question in my head, like this duality of all of our human natures, like even if she meant no harm, maybe she did cause harm. And that's such an interesting character to me. So that's how my books will often start. It'll start from an object, and then I start thinking about the people behind the object. So that's what happened with the Tattered cover as well.
I love hearing writers talk about their inspiration and how it can just be an object or a
Yeah.
feeling that you had when you were visiting someplace.
Absolutely. And I think that there's kind of a perception with amateur sleuth mysteries that they do everything out of nosiness. And that's definitely not the case for my characters. They do everything out of a sense of seeking justice and also making their communities safe. It's a very small place, as I've said, but there's a lot of influx of people because it is a tourist town. It's based on hot springs in North Carolina, but I've turned it into this kind of center for healing. And so there are a lot of visitors coming in by train, by car, and then the Appalachian Trail is there. So a lot of people coming through. They just want to make sure that the people who are residents there are safe. And that's really their motivation for getting involved. And for almost every murder that I create in all these books, there's a personal component. So they're not just breezing in like, okay, we're sticking our nose in everybody's business, let's go. It is definitely more emotional and logical than that.
And Ellery, what I hear, the theme that runs throughout this is that you are big on character development. And I picked up on that immediately, even from the first page. I was like, oh, wow, she's great with character development.
So I guess I try to be the writer that I am as a reader. When I post my top 10 favorite books of the year, you're gonna go down the stack and be like, these are all character-rich stories. That's what I love.
And I know you write mysteries. Do you also read mysteries or do you read just a variety?
I read all over so many different genres. I'm a total mood reader, like I think so many of us are. So like last night I was ready to pick a new book, and I've got my TBR shelf, and I was kind of going down and picking out a few, and I'm like, no, I don't really feel like a thriller tonight. And I picked out another one. I'm like, I don't really feel like historical fiction tonight. And I just grabbed this random book that is speculative fiction, and I really don't know what to expect. And I'm kind of excited. And it started off in a hospital room, and I thought, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. I mean, that's how I work. I will just randomly like, what are you in the mood for, and just grab something.
Well, I am a mood reader as well, and I know that people will be in the mood to read this, especially during the fall season. The Tattered cover out now. Ellery, thanks so much for spending time with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and happy reading out there, everyone. I hope you enjoy everything that you're reading in the next couple of months.
Yeah, cozy up with a good book. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Happy reading.